comparison takes away contentment. It chips away at it because we just human nature. You have what you have, you get used to that, and you're like, you know what? I've got things pretty good. I am abundantly blessed. And then you look at your neighbor across the street, or in our day and age, you look at somebody across the world because you have access to all of their happy reels. All of a sudden, I don't feel quite as abundantly blessed because that person over there was even more abundantly blessed, at least in our minds.
Welcome to the Christ Centered Stewardship podcast with your hosts, Maria Casillas and Nino. Christ Centered Stewardship is a ministry of new money habits designed to equip believers to steward everything God has given them, including their time, talent, and treasure in ways that bring Him honor, glory, and praise. You can join our growing community on Facebook and submit your questions to podcast at newmoneyhabits.com. Now, to begin today's episode, here is Maria Casillas and Nino Villa.
Maria, we have heard it said that comparison is the thief of joy. And that is what we're going to talk about today. But what does it even mean?
Oh, great question. I wonder who even said it. I don't even know. You know what? I take that back. I did a quick search before this, and I think someone said it was attributed to Theodore Roosevelt. I don't know a ton about his history either, but it actually does make sense to me. So if we were to ask that question, what does it mean? I would probably break down some of the individual words, and I would ask myself, what is joy? So what is joy? What we've talked about, Christ being the source of all peace, comfort, and joy. But what do we mean when we say joy?
I think that is a really good spot to start, because joy, I think a lot of people would compare it to happiness, but I think there is a difference between being happy and being joyful. I think about how the Bible also tells us to rejoice in all things. And so how do I find joy in every situation, in every circumstance? It's not, tell that to my buddy who just had to put down a beloved pet, right? Or tell that to somebody who just lost a loved one. Like, rejoice in all things. So joy, I don't know that I have a hard and fast definition for it, but it's akin to happiness, but not dependent on circumstance.
Yeah, well, okay. I think also contentment would be something in there, because when I hear happiness, it kind of feels like it can be a fleeting emotion. Excuse me, like things are going really well, and so I'm happy about that. But I do believe that there's, as you mentioned, joy can be present even without happiness being there. But I think contentment is also one of the things that it sounds, I've been content without being happy before. So, I would maybe say it was a little bit closer to that. And so if we think that it is, joy is happiness / contentment / the things that we just kind of described, then why would comparison steal that? How would that take away from our joy? And I would say, well, comparison itself kind of takes away contentment, right? Like it chips away at it, because we have, if you think about it, just human nature, you have what you have, you get used to that, and you're like, you know what? I've got things pretty good. Like this is really good. I am abundantly blessed. And then you look at your neighbor, or you look at somebody, across the street, or in our day and age, Nino, you look at somebody across the world because you have access to all of their happy reels, and you're like, oh, all of a sudden, I don't feel quite as abundantly blessed because that person over there was even more abundantly blessed, at least in our minds, right? And so I think that that's probably where some of that thief comes from. It's like, yeah, we start to look at other people's stuff and go, oh, maybe I don't have enough after all.
Yeah. I had not planned this prior to us hitting record, but as you are using words like steal and the thief, I can't help but think of how Scripture tells us that the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And what is being chipped away at? Things like contentment, things like gratitude. Those two things, contentment and gratitude, go a long way to I'm joyful. I'm joyful because I recognize the blessings I have, and I am grateful for those. Right? When we live in gratitude, it's really hard for discontentment to rear its ugly head. The moment we start to lose our gratitude for what it is that we do have, and we start to focus on the things we don't have that others do, well, now discontentment can rear its ugly little head, and it starts to chip away at our joy. So yeah, I think it's focusing on words like contentment and gratitude. These things will help anyone to just have a peace about their own situation. Right? A moment ago I said joy is akin to happiness, but without relying on circumstance.
Yeah.
So whether things are going great or things are a struggle. And I've been, a lot of people ask me, obviously, it's a scripted dialogue between people when you enter a room and you're like, how are you doing? But instead of just the general, like, I'm well, I'm okay, I've been letting people know, like, on the mountaintop and in the valley, contentment, peace, joy. So, there are highs, there are lows, and we don't have to necessarily be controlled by those. We can find a nice constant in between.
Yeah, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. That's what keeps running through my head right now. And I think part of that is just like no matter what is put in front of us, because there will be the mountains, there will be the valleys, but whatever is put in front of us, we know that the Lord made this day. And so there is rejoicing that needs to be happening in there. And so I think that's, yeah, it's a beautiful reminder to me, at least.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about how do we end up in this comparison trap? I will say, I'm going to go up on a soapbox for a little bit, and then I'm going to try to come down from that soapbox and help people just navigate the world today. Decades ago, I was born in the late 70s. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. It was just a different time. And for me, I couldn't compare myself to far too many people. Of course, I had a couple of neighbors. During school, you had different pockets of popularity in kids or whatever. You had the jocks and the this and the that and whatever. So there was a little bit of comparison going on. But I can't help but feel like in today's day and age, that comparison, the ability to compare yourself to others has just been multiplied by thousands.
Bajillion.
Yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And it makes it harder to navigate. Right? Said another way, 30, 40 years ago, it was easier to kind of unplug and focus on what you're grateful for, focus on being content with what you have rather than focus on what you don't have. But it just seems like that is near impossible, not impossible, but near impossible to do today.
Yeah, especially if you're not willing to just turn off the sources of all that comparison. And I will say that what saddens me the most, I'm going to jump on that soapbox right there with you. But what saddens me the most really is that our children these days have not had the opportunity to live the way that we did, where it was, even we have kind of the best of both worlds given our ages, in the sense that we understood, we got to experience what things were like without the internet. And then like you would, jump on where every once in a while, it was literally just to, I don't know, to fill in a little bit of time or something. Now everything is completely switched backwards. You are 99% of the time looking at other things and not being with actual people. And then that 1%, you're like, oh, I kind of need a break. My eyes are getting a little bit weary and now I need to be with someone in person. Or, maybe it's just by accident. Like I accidentally have to see you, whether it is at church or it is at the grocery store. Most people don't even go in those things anymore. And so it saddens me that our kids don't have the opportunity for that. And so I will say, like, I'm one of those parents who I didn't even let my children have social media until they were 18 years old. Like, you're 18 years old now, you get to do whatever you want to do, and I will still walk you through what that looks like. And we trained them as they were going, but just the mere exposure to all of that, it's like you have enough in your high school, in your grade school to compare things to. How do I know that? Because we did that. We saw that. But I just want to help shrink that world a little bit for them so that they can really start to understand, what does that look like? How do I navigate that? Those are the most formidable years for these kids. And it's like they are inundated with all of everything else. And it's not just their peer group, right? When they're opened up to social media, yes, the algorithms will give them what they quote unquote want, but it's not just peer groups anymore. You've got all the celebrities and all the stuff that goes along with that. And all of a sudden, like, we got to compare ourselves to what a celebrity looked like on the back of a movie disc or the back of a CD, right? Like, that's what we got to see, and maybe magazines and that kind of stuff. But now, oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
it's everywhere. So anyway, getting off the soapbox with you, and just letting you know that there are ways to sort of tamper that a little bit, and it is to just not go there. And that's why I said earlier, if you're willing to remove some of that, then it is not as impossible as one might think.
Yeah. This all stemmed from a post that we saw on one of the groups that we co-administer, and it was just this idea that the person was asking previous generations, was this stuff easier? Was budgeting easier? Was managing your money easier when things were, quote, simpler? Because not only are we doing this comparison thing all the time now with all social media and whatnot, but with the ease of access, with the ability to just order things online, no longer do you have to get into the car, drive to the store to spend your money. You can just pick up your phone, click the button, and you felt nothing. It just happened so quickly to only ever maybe experience it once you look up and maybe you have a mountain of debt or just no money in your checking account. And so it just seems like not only are we comparing ourselves to others, and so that's really attacking our peace and our joy, our contentment and our gratitude, but things have just become much too easy to consume. We are in a hyper consumer economy, and it was probably that way in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You just didn't have the access. It wasn't as easy. Think about it. If you wanted to go buy a car, you knew, I got to get in my car, go to the dealership, and start to just gather information there. Now you gather all the information on the internet first, and oh, by the way, you could probably start the buying process online too. It's too easy. It's too easy.
Mm. Yeah, that barrier to entry is a lot less now. And so I love how you said you're not feeling anything, because that used to be the stopper, like there was just, it was quote unquote too hard to do all of those things. And so we didn't spend nearly as much back then, just because, not because we weren't, inclined to do that, but because it was just too hard. And also I think that a lot of the technology back then, it was so expensive that it was out of reach for people. Now, things that used to be very, very expensive are a lot less expensive now. And so everyone's like, well, now it's everyone has access to it. Large televisions is a great example of this. Back in the day, I mean, it was if you had a large television, you were considered super rich. Like, I don't know if you remember that, but
Yep.
I'd go over to like our wealthy friends' houses and I'm like, oh my gosh, like look at that thing. That's crazy. And now today, that would have been considered small. That
Yes.
television and the quality would have been crap and it just, all of that stuff. And it's like, okay, so now that it's so much more available for everybody else, now those of us who maybe don't have as much money, but it's so accessible, we're like, oh well, I don't want just the 65-inch television. I want the 90-inch television because everyone else has 100, and I'm doing okay because everyone else has 110-inch television, and so we fall in that middle ground still, but that is so much higher than even we need, and so it's a mind game sometimes. It's like getting in the heads. It's like crazy.
I want to continue with a couple of examples because I think just bringing awareness to good, solid examples will help maybe change perspective, right? We start to think
Okay.
differently. I think about even like cell phones, right? You and I, we remember a time before cell phones, or at least before cell phones for us. Maybe we saw them on TV. They were like the big bricks. And to your point, back in the late 80s, early 90s, that thing might have cost $1,200 or $2,000. And it was like, we would never have one of those. Fast forward all these years later, and now the most common, most popular phone is $1,200. And we've all just accepted it. Well, not all. I will be the first to admit. Even the other day, my wife was like, "You need a new phone." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll upgrade to the next like A series Samsung. Like I don't do the S series. The A series is about $250, which I still want to puke at. Like, why am I spending $250 on a phone? But at least it's not 1,200. Anyway, we have to also recognize that we have agreed to this crap. We have signed up for it. When specifically talking about signing up, when we've all agreed to $30, $40, $50 payments on a phone over the course of 2 years, like we have said, yes, take advantage of us. Cell phones used to be like $60, and that was a lot of money. I would love to pay
Yep.
$60 for a phone today, and I yeah, soapbox. It is a soapbox episode because I want people to just hear how ridiculous it is and understand that as a consumer, you do have power. You do have power. There's power in numbers. If we all kind of just said no, if we all just said nope, I'm not paying that, the prices would come down. But good luck that happening.
Exactly, because the key word there is all. If we all did it, and the chances of us all doing anything is like nil, so it's not going to happen. So on that happy note, is there hope for us? I think that there is. I do think that there is hope for us, and I think the way that we can recognize the hope is that obviously there's hope in Jesus, but if we shrink the influence, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things, which is why, like when I mentioned my kids, I didn't want them to have access to that yet because I wanted to shrink the influence. And I think that, I say that those are the formidable years, the from ages like 7 to 10 all the way up to, 23, 25. But we also are formidable. Like we are being formed till the day that we die. We are being formed. And so I think it's okay for us to recognize that and say, okay, how do I want to be formed? We don't have our parents doing this for us anymore. We have to kind of take the reins back a little bit. But what is important to me and how do I make that happen? So if you know that you are inclined to compare, then shrink that group of available comparison. get off of social media and just start to go, okay, I'm going to compare. I just know it's in my nature, so I'm just going to keep doing it, but I'm going to compare myself to my next door neighbor. I'm going to just bring that back. I'm going to compare myself to the people who I want to actually emulate, who I want to be like. Now we start to go, because that always killed me. Like, why are we comparing ourselves to these celebrities whose lives are in shambles and there's nothing, like if I were offered the opportunity to trade places with them, I would run like crazy because I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want any of that. So why would I compare what I have and what I do and how I think to how this person thinks and what they have and what they do? That makes zero sense logically. Find people that you would like to emulate. Find people who you would necessarily would trade lives with, because that shows a sense of discontentment, but people you look up to and say, okay, that's who I'm going to compare myself to. And it's not going to be to what they have. It's going to be to how they are. How do they behave in their lives? What characteristics do they have? And what values do they express? How can I do that a little bit more?
And you and I always center around like behavior modification wherever we can, right? And part of getting out of the comparison trap is, like you said, one, shrink the influence. But another would also be to focus on the things you do have rather than the things you don't. And so the challenge this week might sound like a gratitude journal. It's really not meant to be like a gratitude journal per se. It's simpler than that. The challenge for our listeners this week is for the next 7 days, each day, just list 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for. It can be whatever, but list 3 to 5 things. And what you'll notice is after 1 week, you have somewhere between 21 and 35 things on your list to be grateful for. And I said it earlier, I believe that when you are focused on what you're grateful for, it is really hard. And science would show you that 2 things can't kind of occupy the same space. So when gratitude is occupying your space, then discontentment can't get in there. Now they're gonna fight for that space. But the more you can focus on what you're grateful for, the less discontentment and the comparison trap can rear its ugly little head. So that's the challenge. List 3 to 5 things each day for the next 7 days and have a list of 21 to 35 things that you're grateful for in as short as 7 days.
Can I add something to that
do.
challenge? I know I've spoken with you about this, Nino, but I don't know if our audience has heard this or not. And even if they have, it bears repeating. So one of the things that I have loved, and it goes to your statement about in space, like competing for space, is to physically put a gratitude list in your home. And I did this once just out of sheer exhaustion. My kids were at each other's throats and I got so tired of it. And I'm like, you know what? Every time you come to me and complain, you're going to have to put something on this gratitude list and you're not able to repeat something. And it was, that's all it was. But what it turned into was just a beautiful expression of what we were grateful for. And because it was physically on the wall, it was a lot easier to walk by and go, oh yeah, I'm grateful for that. Or to even look back and say, oh, what did so-and-so write? You know, and it makes it more of a family thing. So whether you are single or married, or you have a family of many kids, I encourage you, this is my challenge to you, to make it a physical thing in your home so that you see it. And as that discontentment starts to fight for that space, it's a physical space. It's like, nope, I'm not going to get there. I'm actually going to write something on here. And I think the one difference between this and having like a journal per se is that it's easy to write something on a journal and put it next to your bed and never ever look at that again. Whereas if you put something in your face, you are going to be forced to see that on a more regular basis.
Challenge accepted.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Christ Centered Stewardship Podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform for more encouragement and support. And until next time, may the Lord keep you in perfect peace as you set your sight on Jesus.